Tonight, we're bringing you the biggest moments from the campus debate quarterfinals. The stakes were high and the debates were fierce. With the finals just a week away, let's dive into the action.
Side proposition wants to have fun with the debates. According to society, if you have fun, there's higher likelihood of winning. But who am I to set anything? Side opposition.
Hello, my name is John Mwendwa. I would also like to congratulate the judges for reaching semi-finals. It's not easy. I'm looking forward to hear what Prop has to say. I'm really curious.
Hi everyone, my name is Emmanuel. I'm just looking forward to an engaging debate. I know it is semis and I'm ready to be taken down.
From side opposition, one of the speakers is curious as to how this round would go and what proposition would say. For the other speaker, apparently, they're comfortable with being taken down at the semi-finals. Props to them for making semi-finals regardless. With that, I think you're ready to have an engaging debate. So the motion for this round reads, this house as a university scholarship fund targeted at marginalized identity groups would prioritize allocating funds based on merit rather than economic necessity. I repeat that. This house is a university scholarship fund targeted at marginalized identity groups would prioritize allocating funds based on merit rather than economic necessity. I believe it's going to be an engaging debate. With that, welcome the first speaker side proposition to start off the debate for us. Here.
Very important framing that you're going to get from my speech. First things first, what is a university? Because I think that's very important for us to understand. We think a university is just like a corporation, like any other corporation you'll find in the society. What then does this mean? It's looking to keep as much money as possible. Two, it's looking to spend as little money as possible so that it can direct this money to other things. What are then the university's incentives, right? So it's more likely to take actions that best protect their money as much as possible. This means that they're more likely to spend more time on money on things that they see benefit in. And what this means on an impact level, they're likely to spend money on things that give them merit, and merit give them success, like merit and give them surety of being able to succeed. Why is this true? The model of hierarchy in universities is a meritocracy. If you have more experience with more accolades and more achievements, you're hired faster, or two, you're even promoted faster. Why is this true? We think that also, like on a second level, priority to the best institutions or the best faculties in these universities to also motivate them to do better, right? But then secondly, even if they have like faculties that are performing poorly, they're also likely to plow money back to these faculties to also motivate them to do better.
Yeah, the guys we are not funding them because they can fund themselves.
And that's exactly what I'm telling you. It's very simple. At the end of the day, funding still gets to these communities anyway. Here's why you prove it better than anything these guys can say before they even talk. It's very simple. At the point where you fund the best students to be able to go to universities and all these things, this is more beneficial to you at the point where I prove to you you're more likely to become an ambassador of change. A very simple intuition pump, Joy. Malala Yousafzai. One, we think at the point where she got access to like international funding, she was able to plow this back, being a very good student off of where she came from in Afghanistan. She took that funding back to to even teaching these kids things like, say, the basic education levels. She took that same funding, that same access to like NGOs back to these communities to be able to achieve change, even on the basic education levels before they even get to like the institutions of higher learning. At the end of the day, we prove to you that one, change is more likely to be achieved on our end, where you use these students as paragons of change. But then just generally to wrap it up for universities, we think that the signaling effects are very simple. That there is efforts being made by universities to change marginalized communities, and these top universities are at the forefront of this change. And this can only be achieved if and only if these students are excelling. If they're not excelling, they're more likely to reinforce the narrative that these students will never do well even if you give them a chance. We think we have that better chance on our end. We take this from proposition. Thank you.
So why do we think then it is justified for us to even take these students based on their economic resources and need? One, this means that we don't fund students from with high grades such as an A but have resources. So if you get an A but you have the ability to pay for yourself, we don't necessarily give you the scholarship. For those students, we tell them to use their own resources, because we necessarily assess them. We look at your parents' money, we look at your tax, all these things, and we assess that your family is rich and necessarily you can afford a higher education for yourself. So then we don't fund you. We then prioritize students who are with lower grades. You got a C+, but you come from a poor family, you cannot necessarily afford higher education. We prioritize you. This means in our world, both these students go to school. Both these students who have got the grade to go to university are able to access higher education. Notice in their world, only the students with higher grades from marginalized communities, which also have the ability to pay for themselves, necessarily go to school. And then if you get a C+ and you don't afford, you necessarily are not given the scholarships. Okay, impacts. We think then in our side of the world, we achieve utility. This looks like poor students from marginalized communities. One, they don't have access to resources and opportunities. So if they don't go to school, they are likely to result to things such as crime. Necessarily this leads them to jail, or even they can even die. Or two, they can necessarily go into selling drugs or something of the sort. Notice these poor students don't necessarily have shock absorbers. This looks like you don't come from a rich family. You don't come from a rich family whereby you have a C+, you have a grade to go to university, but as long as you cannot afford it, it is not a way that you will going to turn into business or something of the sort. So their primary means of making it in the society is primarily education. And so this makes them very vulnerable individuals. We think we are justified to prioritize them in this kind of thing.
Two pieces of clarity then. One, I feel like at the point you're talking about priority, we're looking at a situation where it is of crucial importance in and of itself. We're going to accept the framing that they give us, because one, we feel like minorities, these are people who've always like faced a barrier of entry, having a difficulty to access these sort of things anyway. But I feel like what we need to understand is now what is the best way for a specific struggling society to go about, especially when accessing a very elitist thing, because you have to understand what scholarships essentially actually entail. Essentially, scholarships look like they're giving you funding and they expect you to perform within a specific level so that they're able to like accept or like even receive the best materialization of benefits anyway. Two pieces of responses to their material before we get on to our case. One, firstly, we don't even understand why this debate is going to be about privileged minorities. I feel like from the setting itself, we're trying to talk about people who've been having a difficulty in accessing this sort of like education anyway. So we don't understand where the entire idea of becoming a rap or even such alternatives are going to stand within this debate. One, they say that, oh, we're going to have a situation where we are willing to bite the bullet, and we have a situation where even if you get a C, we'd rather give you the access to like education in itself. Two pieces of responses to this. One, we feel like this is not only going to be harsh for these individuals essentially, because listen to how I started my debate. I was able to explain to you how specifically scholarships actually tend to work. There are certain expectations that you as an individual have to meet for you to be able to, like, let me say, even maintain this like scholarship. There have been instances where these organizations even tend to like rescind these scholarships at the point you are not even able to like perform towards these standards. What then does this mean? It means at the point you are able to like put merit, we're able to put in students who are able to like perform within the capability, and they're able to essentially withhold these specific sort of scholarships because they're having the best capacity to perform and to be able to like maintain these scholarships anyway. We feel like them being able to just take on the trade-off as to say that, oh, we'd rather just give them the access anyway. These students are essentially going to suffer even within this model, and they feel like that is a harm that they're not able to like escape from in such an instance.
That's why my partner uses the example of, we are all black, but I'm the son of Obama and you are the son of somebody in Atlanta slums. We are minorities, but we are not the same. Realize, panel, if all of you are worth $2, it is impossible for me to prioritize based on economic resources. By the mere fact that I can prioritize among the three of you on economic resources means one of you is richer than the others and one of you is poorer than the others. That's the nuance in this debate. What this means is that in our world, what we do is realize, we already tell you these people have met the basic minimum requirement, because there's a basic minimum requirement to go to universities. Universities can't fund you if you don't meet that basic minimum requirement. Like, that is equivalent to breaking the law. What it means then, we look at these people who have met this basic requirement. We look at who can fund themselves and who can't. That is to say, if all of you have an A, but Leon comes from Karen and Leon can fund himself, we don't fund Leon. But Ndolo comes from Mathare, he has an A as Leon, but Ndolo can't fund himself, we prioritize Ndolo based on economic resources. But even if Ndolo has a C and Leon has an A, we still prioritize Ndolo because he can't fund themselves. At the end of the day, Leon still goes to the university because they have the resources, and Ndolo goes to the university because we give them the access to do this. The biggest case from Prop is to say these people will not succeed. This is a lie. Most of you here never got an A to go to university, but most of you here are succeeding in university. Most of you here are not engineers and doctors. That means you never got an A, but you are succeeding. The basic argument is to say we have C, B, B minus, B plus students in universities, including the ones where they come from. In fact, they should have told us their grade in this debate, such to satisfy. And these people still succeed.
Opposition tries to talk about the fact that a lot of these things, the reason why conscience doesn't need to be talked about is that the state will descend into chaos. There needs to be a code of conduct. We need to recognize the fact that the national conscience is already enshrined in the Constitution. This is what the people want. Yet the police officers are going transgressive to that. Because remember, if the police officers are being told to refuse orders on grounds of consciousness, they're not doing this in terms of orders that necessarily help the society, because there is no ground of conscience that can make you right in terms of protecting property. However, there is grounds to refuse to do something because you feel it is not right to kill someone, it is not right to maim someone, it is not right to be brutal against someone. Even the judiciary they talk about, in the wake of these protests that have just come, affirmed this because the judiciary always was on the side of the people, because they always kept on saying that the police officers should not be doing this. Therefore, the police officers, by the very actions that they were meting out against the people, were already going against the conscience of the society in which they live in. Because remember, police officers are not people who live in isolation from us. They are amongst us. They are our fathers, they are our mothers, they are our brothers, they are our sisters. Therefore, if we live in a society where these police officers are going to be treated as pariahs, where exactly are we going for? Because if the entire thing is about self-preservation of these police officers in this society, even if they have all the money in the world but no one wants to engage with them, we don't necessarily see how this is a self-preservation that ends up helping them in the first place. Because remember, the example that George gives you about Ndirangu Mao, this is someone who was given an equivalent of 80,000 shillings. And then ended up living in the society where he was in. However, the entire society shunned him because no one wanted to be associated with him. It was basically the 60s version of kusalimiwa. So we now end up finding ourselves in a situation where now, when they talk about the preservation of these police officers and how we need to ensure that their children can continue to eat, they can continue to get 2 mandazis, now the very security of the family members of these police officers is at stake.
We think the only time you have police officers who are being told to go out and offer protection or certain aspect is when there's a sense of anarchy or a sense of destruction that is going to occur. We can easily prove this with protest. There's loss of property, there's loss of life, there's just that idea that anarchy is going to occur. We think anarchy is bad on 3 levels. 1, it harms the idea of the state and the identity of the state. If we lack that stability, you cannot offer any forms of protection. But secondly, it actively ensures that you have no forms of continuity for the state. You have no normalcy. You just can't wake up tomorrow and know, I will have this certain routine. You lack that routine. It's bad for you. You can't offer any forms of continuity for the state. But thirdly, it just generally ensures that there's a level of harm that is constantly going to be propagated in society, and we think it's bad. If you allow this level of anarchy, for a state it means 3 things. 1, the state is not going to exist, and that's bad for the state, and that's why we think it's justified for them to follow order from the above. But secondly, it just means the community. Even these people who offer this conscience to society are not going to work together. You have the idea that Raila is bad or this is bad. If you do not allow that form of lack of anarchy, you have so much forms of distraction that exist between these people. It means you lack social cohesion. We think that is bad in principle, and there's no justification for it.
Season 2 saw 2 universities, Tangaza and Strathmore, go undefeated. As they face off at the quarterfinals, who do you think deserved the win? Let's have a look.
And for this week, we have a special treat for you. We have Tangaza University debating against Strathmore University. A fun thing about the two teams that are about to welcome themselves on stage is that they have not lost any round from the onset of this campus debates recording, which means then you are in for a treat from both speakers and both teams, because both of them are here to prove to themselves that they do not lose, neither do they have a capacity to be second in any debate that they get to do. So without further ado, I welcome speakers from side proposition, Tangaza University, and speakers from opposition, Strathmore University.
The motion of today says that this House supports appointment of professionals as cabinet secretaries. Who is a professional? When I reflect back to my university, Sister Jane Gikonyo speaks about be a professional. Be somebody who understands his role. As a teacher, you understand yourself, you must behave professionally. So a professional person is he or she who understands his roles in the docket that he holds and works on. So in this debate, we are preparing people who will always execute their duties in understanding their roles of what they are appointed for. To appoint is very different from elected. To elect, we can elect based on tribal base. But in appointment, we are looking for competence, not friendship. To begin, we have countries that have seen good appointments of CSS. I'll begin with Singapore, a man called Tharman in the year 2007 and 2015. When he was appointed as a CS for economics, he understands that the economy of the country grew to a level that it was never disabled when they were undergoing crisis. Just because he was understanding his docket, he was qualified as an economist, and this is a course that he did in his school. We come back to former CS Fred Matiang'i, a CS of education, who understood his roles and undertook all that it required to ensure that the grades were credible and ensured that there was minimal irregularities during exams.
Two things here. Notice a lot of the decisions that these people make are not in a vacuum. They make a lot of crisis-driven decisions, meaning then where cabinet secretaries need to make swift, politically driven decisions that, such as prioritization of resource or generally responding to public pressure and that kind of chat. These professionals are likely to prioritize a slow, methodical-based approach from data. These guys have just come from debating last week, probably this thing of the funding model and that kind of thing. The government has provided layers and layers of argumentation and logic and reasoning for why this resource-based model is going to work. If you're having a professional in place, they're going to defend that thing and they're going to die with it. That means you at home, who is struggling now with education, who's probably gotten to, pursuing your university degree and you probably have hopes for your future, are likely to be disadvantaged by this professional in power simply because they're interested in protecting the interests that are driven by data, that are driven by a lot of things that generally don't respond to this political pressure and accountability in and of themselves. Anchor argument then being simple panel. This argument or this paradigm, the counterfactual, is antithetical to the democratic systems that govern status quo. Cabinet secretaries are required to make decisions that go beyond the technicalities and involve a lot of political judgment. This then means that these professionals are likely to be less adaptable to deal with the political complexities that exist within status quo. There is exacerbated risk of political technocracy within their world. This is likely to lead to pure technocratic government decisions simply made by elites rather than elected representatives. Simply because these individuals are under the guise that, oh, I went to some school somewhere, so I know better than other individuals, so I'm making this decision trying to affect and benefit you in your future.
To the question, a very simple answer, yes. And that's why I talked about employing a system where the PS the next in command, who is the PS, should be in the political arena so that they can be able to solve that political area. But the cabinet secretary, when it comes to international issues, that person can go to the international issues and speak about health, not a cabinet secretary who is in the political arena, who will just go there to use our funds for no sense. Like, for example, you had a corruption case that happened in, I think it was in Dubai, where one of the Kenyan was caught with 200 million Kenyan money for no good reason. I don't know what he was doing with that money. Secondly, these people are already showing you their problem. One, they are supporting corruption instead of the people. Who is suffering? The people. You, the taxpayer, you are suffering from their corruption. They want a full chicken so that they can eat all your money so that you can die poor and poor.
The speakers for tonight, from Sad Proposition, we have the University of Nairobi. And from Side Opposition, we have the team from Tangaza University. While they're settling down, I'll allow our amazing judges to introduce themselves and possibly tell us which team they think can make third place.
Hi everyone, my name is Leon Agula. I'll be a judge for this round. As for which team gets third place, it's the best team, so may the best team win.
Hi guys, my name is Lucy Osenyi. I'll be the chair for this round. In regards to which team, the team that will take the third place, well, the beauty of debate is competing for the spot, so go for it. All the best.
Hi, my name is Ndolo. The team that will finish third is Manchester United. For you guys, I don't know. You just need to convince me. All the best.
I mean, it's good to dream that Manchester United can finish third, but I guess that's why this season is here. With that, I will allow the speakers to introduce themselves and tell us whether they think they can actively hold the position of third place or if they abdicate it and rather opt for the position of fourth place. And from the gents that we have from Side Opposition, their goal is to actively tell you that the lion, the champion, the conqueror, you know, and that song is here. So we hope the very best within this round, that the teams will give their A game and possibly win the debate. The motion for this round reads, this House supports the use of marketing boards in the agricultural sector, help stabilize prices by setting minimum prices for agricultural products, preventing drastic market fluctuations, and ensure farmers are not exploited. I'll repeat that. This House supports the use of marketing boards in the agricultural sector to help stabilize prices by setting minimum prices for agricultural products, preventing drastic market fluctuations, and ensure that farmers are not exploited.
As I've stated the main stakeholders, and I've said that most of the problem here is actually not the farmers and the consumers or the government, but actually the brokers. And our solution is that every stakeholders know what is expected of them. When we have these standardized prices, let's say now that the marketing board will be in place and they'll be able to achieve or set a standard price for the markets from the farmers, then the farmer or even the consumers, everyone will be expected to know what they expect. Like these key corporations won't actually undermine the farmers by buying these products from a low price and going to sell them to large-scale operations at an extremely high price, in return disadvantaging the farmers.
I don't get it when my friend comes here and says that brokers come and buy some goods from the farmers, and sell them at a higher price. For example, I come and buy a given good at 200 shillings and I sell it at 300 shillings as a broker. How is this affecting the development or the achievement of the farmers? That one I did not understand when you talk about that. So, again, to now begin my submission on this, I want to tell you that the marketing boards, they only offer a short-term stability and they create a long-term inefficiencies. When you use this kind of boards, they will always be setting standards that they expect products to be sold at. In this scenario, you find they're causing a lot of inefficiencies. So key terms that I want to use here to defend this motion, number one, why we are not buying the idea of marketing board is because they are limiting farmers' autonomy. If I talk about farmers' autonomy, what I mean is the freedom of farmers. Think of a scenario where you are told, whatever you are done, you are controlled on what to do and how to do it. These boards come to control farmers on the prices they use, but they don't understand the cost that you use in producing these particular products. For example, you are producing tea. The cost or the production cost that you use in plowing and doing etc. could have been higher than this. Then after producing this particular product, you are told that you cannot go up, above this particular price. This one limits your freedom of getting the profit that you will have realized if you could have set the profit according to the season where you are planting. Because there are some seasons when you plant, you get that the customers or the buyers are very low and you run at a loss. And you find out that this kind of marketing boards, they are not flexible. Like when a time of off-peak and the time of low-peak, they don't regulate their prices, but rather they take the same price that they used to last year or previous season to set their standards.
They say they want autonomy for farmers. We think we cater for that on our side of the world. Why do we think it's unlikely that they cater for autonomy of farmers? How agriculture works is that the farmer produces and the broker comes and takes the goods and sells it to the consumer. Why we think they're not likely to get autonomy is because of three things. You exploit the farmers, they have less motivation to work. At that particular point, you have no autonomy for these farmers. But secondly, you give them unjustified pay. What this then means, they are less likely wanting to produce and that sort of chat. But the third thing, we think there's more, less products are just being bought within the space. This is just Econ 101. At the point in time, people are not producing, the farmers are not producing. We think people are more likely not going to be buying goods and that sort of chat because now it's very expensive for them to accrue benefits and that sort of chat. We think that's very, very problematic for the society. They come and ask us a question how does the brokers affect the performance of farmers? Literally, come on. I think at the point in time, the broker already has more incentive to sell things at a very expensive rate. It's unlikely that the farmer will want to sell it at a very cheap price. I already tell you how they're more likely going to opt into producing for their families and that sort of chat. And we think that's very problematic because that ideally incentivizes a lot of that ideally disincentivizes people to get food and that sort of chat.
For example, you talked about onion costing at 30 bob. So if a price cap, you have just placed it that onion to be bought at 30 bob, it will always consist to be bought at 30 bob. Okay, that's a price cap. You have capped it to be there. If, for example, you have said this book will cost at 30 bob, that book will remain to be 30 bob, and that can only work if and only if the customers can, the farmer can be able to produce. Look at this price, this marketing boards, the one you are really wanting us to go through. One, our factories have failed to grow. Why? Because they don't see why the need of them selling the products here in Kenya, and yet there's a middleman. But if you can now change the system to just build industries so that those industries can buy these products direct from the farmer and then produce for us these beautiful clothes that we are wearing, it could be much better instead of producing, making people to just say that if you are producing cotton, it will be costing at 100 bob or 30 bob, and then there is that fluctuation. Remember, the seasons of the world they are now totally different. These people are there just for their beneficial and pocket money. If they don't get that, they will not even help the world. Now, again, is that lack of transparency and accountability. Remember those people who are now there to get that accountability, it won't be there because they are only after their pocket and their family, not the mere mwananchi and the farmer. That's why you hear a lot of these days the farmers are going out of strike saying they will not be selling this, they will not be selling that. Why? Because of that lack of accountability. They don't know who is selling at a good price. But if you leave the farmer to have his free will or his free nature of buying and selling is good, they will be able to produce at a large scale, because they know if I produce at a large scale, I will increase more customers, because the more the goods are more, the more easier the customers will come.
Without further ado, we welcome the first speaker proposition to start off the debate for us. Here.
Zombie, oh zombie, zombie, oh zombie, zombie, oh zombie, zombie, oh zombie. My Nigerian friends, I hope you appreciate that one. So, I will start by giving a short story of a man named Dirango Mau. He was the guy who famously killed one of the biggest patriots of the country, Dedan Kimathi, in October 1st, 1956 at Karunaine Forest. He met this Dedan Kimathi at that forest and shot him. His defense, while going into court, having justified what he'd done, is the British wanted me to kill him, and so I did. Now, of course, part of this story, please keep in mind, judges, is to argue on self-preservation, which is one of the things they're probably going to come in and argue on. Now, Dirango Mau was given a hefty reward at the time. That is 500 shillings, which in today's standards is 80,000 Kenya shillings. He bought himself a lorry, with which he was hoping he would ferry passengers from Nyeri to Nairobi. And of course, you will think that this is a happy ever after for him, because he has followed his orders, done what he needed to do. Now, of course, he needs to just sit back and reap the rewards. But unfortunately, in as much as you can argue, oh, following orders, keeping your job, self-preservation and all of that, you do not live at the behest of the government.
Firstly, monopoly of violence. Ladies and gentlemen, let us understand that as per the law and as per our constitution, state has a monopoly of violence. What does this mean? This means at a point where there are certain activities that are happening that disturb the peace and the identity of the state, then the state itself has the mandate to protect itself and to protect the individuals within these situations by enacting certain acts of violence. That is why in some instances where there are criminals and there are riots on the streets that are destroying public property, the state has the mandate to actually come in and take these people from these situations, however they need to ensure that the rest of the property that has not been destroyed is protected. Such are instances where we really need to understand that police aggression is necessary. However, what we do not agree to is police brutality. We don't think that is something that can be argued in this debate to a very large degree, and I think that is why George was trying to meander his way through it, and I'll tell you, I'll just call it as it is. Whoever is brutal as a police officer will be brutal regardless. So whatever George wants to argue that we want to implement conscience so that police officers are not aggressive with individuals as following orders. Police officers are not given orders to be aggressive with individuals. They're given orders to protect the peace. It is these specific police officers that choose to be aggressive. That means even if you talk about giving these people the ability to use their conscience, they will still be aggressive because they think this is justified in their own situation. So you are not going to save yourself, George. They will still be brutal with you. I am sorry, there's nothing you can do about it. So now let's go into more substantive matter. Why do we think that this idea of implementing conscience is a very bad thing? Two things. One, we think there is already other alternatives that already exist that implement some sort of sense into these police orders, right? We think that there already exist court systems that are already working within the system to bring some sort of conscious bias inside of orders.
If you had been the judge, do you think the motions were easy or complicated? Let's see what the judges' thoughts were.
The judges have decided they are not yet convinced by the debaters on set, but they equally want to give them one more chance to determine who gets to make to finals and who doesn't. With that, I will invite the judges to ask a question to proposition and a question to opposition.
Okay, my question goes to side prop, and before I ask the question, I'd like to congratulate you guys for the amazing debate. So my question is short and simple. What will happen to the SC students?
To side opposition, the question is simple. If there is no guarantee of success to side opposition, and there's people who have better qualifications than you, what is the justification to constantly fund these people? Is it just because they are poor, or there's better justification from your end?
We have had the questions from the judges. The question for side proposition is, what then happens to C students within such societies? But the question to side opposition is, if success is not the metric, then what happens to societies or the funding models that cannot access these resources in the first place? With that, we welcome side proposition to respond to that question. Here.
Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that question. But fortunately, they do. They tell you that at the point where you've met the basic qualifications to join a university, they concede to a framing that it's a meritocracy. It's your merit that gets you through the door. We think that's the same response we give to that question.
The question from the panel is, in the worst case scenario where success is not guaranteed, what's the justification to continually fund these students? Two responses. First, success is really not guaranteed on either side, because even if you get an A, you guys have seen a lot of people get A's and drop out of university. So, you know, even those people fail. But secondly, the justification is not just that you are poor. The justification can also be you met the basic minimum requirement for you to be there. Yeah, so that can be the justification. You met the basic minimum requirement, so we are kind of justified to fund you. But beyond that, Randy can say, I don't know, we concede to some framing. The debate happens in a university. There has to be a basic minimum grade, and then you have to choose among the like 5,000 students, who are you prioritizing to fund, because resources are not infinite, and you know you can't fund everyone. So do you prioritize?
We now welcome the judges to give us the call that they had for this round. Tell us, who do you think makes it to the finals?
Okay, so I'll just start off by a brief summary of the cases that we captured and then go into the call and the justification later on. So from proposition, we caught two things. One is the fact that universities are operating as corporations and as businesses. As such, they need to have something that ensures long-term success for themselves. So meritocracy will be the best way to go. Secondly is the fact that these students can be used as paragons of change within their societies, and they can be used as signals of change. And therefore, they can be able to impact their societies after they've benefited from the education that they get from universities. From opposition, they talk about the fact that even within marginalized groups, there are privileged groups that exist, and as such, it will be very unfair to prioritize them, given that there are certain benefits that they get from being a privileged group. And therefore, they talk about the fact that for us to get better utility, we need to therefore go with economic necessity, given that we benefit those who most need it.
Do you think it is proposition that has won this round or opposition that has won this round? I know you're eager to find out what the judges have as well. So with that, we welcome the chair for this round to give the call that they had for the debate and also determine who gets to make to finals. Judges.
The team that goes to the finals is opposition, and I'm going to give justifications as to why that is so. So congratulations to opposition. From proposition, what we get is that the only way we are able to get people who are capacitated and people who are competent enough to be good people or like better leaders is by giving professionals like CS positions and that sort of chat. What opposition responds is that there is no guarantee first that these people who are professionals are going to be incentivized to act in the best interest of the people. Why? Just human nature. People are selfish. You come like you are a human being before you're a professional. But the second thing is that they also exist competency and accountability in the event where these people are not working alone. So there's a whole ICT department, there's a whole finance department. So you're not alone, rather like you have people behind your back. So competency is still achieved on their side of the world. The second thing then becomes on minority. Opposition poses that the only way you're able to achieve political stability is that if you're able to include everyone in the participation. How you're able to do this is that everybody is able to get like a share of the cake of the government and that sort of chat. If you do not do this, there's a lot of political instability and backlash that comes. Why then do we buy this argument? It's because of how we ask like proposition a question. Do you think political stability is important? They say yes, and their answer is,
we think we are only able to get like political stability if we have the PS being a political leader and that sort of chat. What opposition gives in response is that, look, the CS position is more of like a CEO position. It's very political. In the event that you do not guarantee the politics or the minorities don't feel represented, it's very, very bad. The backlash is particularly very, very bad. Then now the comparative then becomes on competency versus minorities, and why do we buy the minority argument, and why do we think the backlash is something we are able to buy. So the debate happens in a democratic world as characterized by like opposition, and proposition does not challenge this. So we think the whole idea of how minorities are less likely going to be included and how you're able to particularly exclude a huge number of people just because they do not get access to education and that sort of chat is very, very bad and like very problematic for the society. We think on these three clashes, we were able to rank opposition above proposition.
You have heard from the judges themselves. At the start of this round, one of the judges mentioned that maybe Manchester United will be the one to finish third this season. Funny enough, from the speakers who have just won this round, we have a fan of Manchester United. He might just have predicted what's going to happen with the Premier League, but I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Congratulations to Side Proposition for being able to win for themselves, which means they're officially third place in Campus Debate Season 2, University of Nairobi, represented by Gloria and Twain from University of Nairobi. With that, we welcome Side Proposition, who have 1 minute strictly to further their argument and maybe close it off, probably sway the judges as well. Proposition.
Very quickly, there are two corrective mechanisms for subjectivity in society, the judiciary and the constitution. Even if you don't have any conscience, follow the national conscience, which is the constitution. And as for the interpretation of what the constitution says, that is for the judiciary to say. Of course, we've had a government that has broken constitutional law after constitutional law, that has said that, for example, the housing bill is unconstitutional, sending police officers to Haiti is unconstitutional, and the like. So, of course, we think that in these protests, where the judiciary has specifically said, do not brutalize protesters, and they still do it, we think for our side, we are correct in saying that the police officers following the conscience and disobeying orders will be well within what is objective in society. But specifically to one of the things that they came and talked about, following orders. If the government tells you to protect property, and your interpretation of those orders are you go and brutalize people on the streets, pick me up, almost break my hands and throw me in jail just for talking to the media personally, or kill more than 300 people, right, many of whom were children, then that means either your interpretation of those orders were wrong, or you interpreted it the way the government wanted you to interpret it. Think about that, judges.
For this round, we have Side Opposition carrying the day. That is the team from Pioneer International University. They have been able to garner for themselves position 5 out of this entire season. I think it's a big win for them, but equally it speaks to the teams that they represent. Will Manchester or Arsenal get to be 5th place when they finish the Premier League, or are they just a letdown of the teams they represent? But equally, it's a massive congratulations to Side Opposition for the win that they've been able to get for themselves. For Side Proposition, they've equally managed to fight their way through the entire season and to get themselves to the place where they're at. Them being able to beat 6 other teams that existed prior to them is a massive, massive win, which means then equal congratulations to Side Proposition from Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology for being able to get for themselves position 6. I think it's been a very lovely round where we've gotten to understand the idea as to how police officers need to function within society. We've analyzed how consciousness is very subjective, and you cannot use that as a metric for the laws that are currently existing and whether or not to follow orders. But I think equally there's a clarification that has been made, which is police brutality is not something that is actively sensitive to things that are ordered by the state or by the people that are actively chosen to govern us. So to all police officers out there, We pray that you'll get to actively stop police brutality and help us in this fight for protecting citizens and protecting people at large. It's been fun. It's been amazing. We hope to see you next week, same time, same place, and hopefully in the final episode. My name is Masi Vugutsa, your host.